Hello everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jackie and I create mosaics using sea glass. And today I'm going to talk to you about taking an art piece that you particularly love and using that as inspiration to create a design for a sea glass mosaic and trying to transfer some of those details from the art piece into sea glass. So just to tell you a little bit about how I got started on this piece, I was working on this really tiny piece. I had this tiny little frame that's really old and it's really cool. It's got quite a bit of character in it, but it's way too small to do a full sea glass mosaic. So I thought I would try to do a little succulent in it. And I got playing around with my sea glass and standing the pieces on end and making circles going around and around just to see what it would look like. And in the end I thought, oh, it kind of looks like a cute little succulent, and I put some green leaves on it. But when I looked at it, what it really made me think of is Van Gogh's painting, The Starry Night. So once you look at that picture, I'm sure you recognize the painting. And these round circles of sea glass look so much like that moon up in the sky and all of those stars in the sky. And so I thought, I wonder if I could use that as inspiration to do a sea glass piece. So that's what prompted me to get started on this piece. And I thought in order to do that and to put all of those stars in there, I needed a fairly big canvas to work on. Sometimes I think of my windows and my frames as canvases. So I have this really large antique vintage window that came out of, I believe it came out of a church in PEI, and it has 8 panes in it. So I thought I'm going to do this. And the other thing that made me think this would be a good piece to use, if you do some reading up on Van Gogh, he had a few mental health issues and he spent some time in an asylum. And when he painted The Starry Night, it was the view out of the window from his asylum. So I thought this might be looking at this painting from Van Gogh's view of inside his room, looking out the window. So that's what got me going on this one. So what I did here to get started was I cut 8 pieces of paper that are the size of each pane of glass, and then I did a sketch on each piece to show that 1/8 of the picture. So it's kind of like Van Gogh's painting in the sense that we've got a big moon, we've got all of these stars, some wavy lines through the sky, and then I'm planning to have the village, there's a bit of a village down below, and this big cypress tree coming up on the one side. So my plan is to make it somewhat similar to the outlook of Van Gogh's The Starry Night, but obviously I'm not going to recreate The Starry Night. I'm going to start with the circles in the sky. So if you look really closely at this picture, I just did a bunch of circles of sea glass going around and around. And so I'm going to do that in different sizes. I've started one here with the moon. The others will all be a little bit smaller. And the other thing that I want to do, I plan to make the bottom brown and I plan to make the sky green because my goal is to create the feeling of a night sky. So if the sky is green, it's going to be darker than my typical white sky. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a close-up here on my stars that I'm making. This one here is actually the moon. It's the biggest star. And as you can see, I have the sea glass pieces sitting up on end. There's a few that lie flat. To me, that just adds a little bit more interest to the star itself. And here's a couple in here. Even when they're small, if the pieces are all stuck up on end, it just kind of looks interesting. And then I have a couple more over in this pane of glass. And as you can see here, I have this one that starts on one side of the glass and ends on the other side of the glass. And I have one here that's kind of tucked behind the cypress tree, which will be all brown. And here's one that I've started on the top pane of glass, and I'll finish it on the bottom pane of glass. So my focal point for this sea glass piece is the stars. After all, the name of the piece is The Starry Night. So I want to be careful not to overwhelm the stars with the rest of the background. And I want to get the feel of a night sky, so I'm thinking I'm going to fill in a lot of the background with green. So I'm just going to place a bunch of green on here, just to start with, especially up around the top. And I'm picking out kind of medium to small green because I want want it all kind of filled in green in the background. So I'll just place these around for now, and then I'll go about fitting them all in. But I'm also thinking to add some interest in this, and you get all these swirly lines. In Van Gogh's painting, he had tons of swirly lines. So I thought what I would do is change the scale of the white, some white sea glass to add some white strips in here, and to just add a bit more interest and movement in the sky. So I picked out some of my really large whites. I have some that have a lot of depth to them because they're bottle tops or sides of bottles. So they're a totally different scale than the tiny little whites that I used to create the star. And the other thing that I have is I brought out my dish of aqua colors. And I'm going to pick out some of the large aqua pieces as well. But if I combine some of those aqua pieces in stripes, even the small ones, if I do little stripes of those through the green, it's also going to add a lot of movement to the sky, because I want all this incredible activity going on so that it feels like a night sky, but it's really alive. And you see, when you're doing a flowing line like this, if you take your pieces of sea glass from one pane and then just continue it on into the next pane, it helps with that break that happens with the break in the glass. I often do that. I get a bit of a rough outline, and then as I'm gluing things in, you'll often see me switch things all over the place and trade out pieces for different pieces just to get ones that fit better. So I think you can see here how if I have these stripes of aqua and then I'll add in some stripes of green. I'm not sure yet if it's going to work to give me the effect of a night sky, but that's my goal. So I'll see how it works out here. So I'm just going to zoom in here on the upper right hand pane of glass, because once I have a bit of an overall plan made, I like to just focus on one pane of the window and get that one filled in and then move to the next pane. And then they'll all flow together in the end. So with this pane, what I've decided to do, I know I want to get all these flowing lines in the sky just to make it really dynamic. So I've decided to include some of these great big gigantic chunky whites up at this end. And I think that'll really add some interest. So once I've done this, then I want to fill in the rest with green to create a feel of the night sky. But I don't just want to fill it in. I want to do, this is where I dumped all the green into the pane of glass, but I'm not just going to glue them in. I'm going to arrange them in lines so that the greens themselves create some flowing lines. So if you see here, I've started down in the corner between the big chunky whites, and I'm creating a line of green coming up. And one of the advantages of sea glass is that it comes in all different sizes and shapes, and if you play around, you can find the shapes that really do fit together well. So usually what I'll do here is I'll just play around, find a bunch of sea glass that fits together, put it in a line, and then I'll start to glue them in. So it's really worth making the effort in a piece like this to really make your time to arrange your pieces in a way that creates a bit of a secondary pattern. So after finishing that one pane of glass, in order to carry on to the second pane of glass here, I'm trying to make sure that these nice flowing lines continue on into the next pane of glass. And I'm also trying to mix some stripes of white in here with some stripes of aqua and with the green, just to make the sky a little bit more dynamic. The other thing that I think is working here to make it quite interesting is I'm varying the size of the sea glass pieces. So like along here I've got great big pieces, and here they're kind of medium. Here's a little medium, medium, and then in here I've got a line of little sea glass. And the more I vary the pieces of sea glass, the more interest I think it's going to make in the sky in the end. So as I work across the top of this sea glass piece, I find it so interesting that even though I'm only working with white and green, and just by varying the size of the sea glass and the way I arrange them, it can create so much interesting detail. So even though I don't have a whole array of colors, I think what really adds to the interest is the fact that there's so many different shades. So you get all these different shades of white, and there's a ton of different shades of green. Green is just amazing when you put it all together like this, how many different shades you see. And the other thing that makes it so interesting is all the different shapes. So you get all these different shapes, and every piece of sea glass has its own individuality. And to me, that's what makes it interesting, and I think that's why you can have just a section of all white and green, and it can be so interesting. So I've got this third pane of glass all filled in with sea glass, and I'm really pleased with how just using the white and the green sea glass and getting these swirls going and keeping patterns, just the way it's creating a really dynamic night sky. Whoops, there's a piece of sea glass I missed gluing. I'll have to glue that one on. I find that happens sometimes when I'm working on a piece and then I go and stand it up and I'll have 2 or 3 pieces fall off, because when I've been putting them in place and arranging them, I miss gluing them on. So anyway, the one thing I wanted to point out as I'm moving into this fourth pane of glass here, I've started lining up some big pieces of sea glass so that you see this line of larger greens continuing on into the next pane of glass. And the same with this white. I have this long strip of white coming here, and I'm continuing it on into this pane of glass. Haven't got them all glued on yet, but I'm getting there. So the other thing that I have to do in this pane of glass here is to start introducing this brown, because I have this cypress tree growing up from the bottom of the piece into the night sky. And I'll just arrange a bunch of brown pieces along here to create this tree, or shadow of a tree, because it's at night and you can't see the tree really clearly, but it's going to create this big shadow coming up into the sky. So I'm sticking with primarily small browns here. I know in the bottom of my piece I'm going to be using a lot of large browns to create the village down in the foreground. So with this tree reaching up into the sky, I'm thinking that it's going to be really more effective if I use small browns. So I finished my night sky that was inspired by Van Gogh's The Starry Night, and I'm really pleased with how the white and the green are all swirling together to create a really dynamic night sky. And I have the top of the tree here reaching up into the night sky. You just see the silhouette of the tree. So I'm quite excited to move on from here to finish the rest of the piece. And I hope this has been really inspiring for you. So be sure to join me in my next video when I'm going to show you how to create the village down below here to complete this piece that was inspired by Van Gogh. If you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything in particular you'd like to see me address in this video, please be sure to post a comment below. Until next time, happy sea glass hunting!